Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to everyone. Welcome to PSS at USM session for today. We are now entering new topics under the PSS at USM course. So thank you for joining us. I am your moderator for today. My name is Sarah from CDAE. I'd like to welcome my colleague who is the secretariat for this course, Puan Hazwani, and also my fellow CDAE team who are here joining this session. Before we begin, let us start with a brief introduction on what postgraduate supervisory skills are all about. Generally, this course consists of 3 main modules where it will be conducted within 5 to 6 hours modular modules, and participants are required to fulfill the minimum hours as stated on the screen. The main target participants for this course will be the academic staff who have not graduated any students as of July 2022, and please take note that there will be no CPD point given for all sessions related to PSS at USM. For those of you who wish to see the recording on the past session, the link is on the screen as shown. Otherwise, please take a look out in the chat box where we will share the link shortly. This is a gentle reminder to all, please log in and attend this course using your own USM email account to ensure your attendance will be recorded in the WebEx system. We hope that you can give your full attention to this course throughout the whole session. For any question to the CDAE team, please use the chat box so that we can refer and respond as soon as we can. Alright, today's session will be about Research Ethics Part 2, which will be presented by our Honourable Speaker from Kubang Krian Campus, Associate Professor Dr. Azlan Husin. Associate Professor Dr. Azlan Husin is a medical lecturer, consultant physician, and clinical hematologist in the Department of Internal Medicine, School of Medical Sciences. He was awarded medical degree by UKM in 1996 and the later Master of Medicine, Internal Medicine in 2005 by University Science Malaysia and qualified as clinical hematologist in 2010. His area of practice and research includes leukemia, lymphoma, myeloma, supportive care in cancer patients, and benign hematological disease. He has published many papers and acquired grants related to his area. He is currently the chairman of USM's Human Research Ethics Committee, which we call as JAPAM USM, and council member for Malaysian Society of Hematology. We are very happy to have him with us today, and so without further ado, please welcome Associate Professor Dr. Azlan Husin.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Inshallah, I will share with you on this module regards of human and research ethics and also research proposal preparation. So let me share my slides. Okay, hope everyone can see my slide. Okay. So as I said, this talk will cover 3 topics. Number 1 is human research ethics in USM, plus some part of the general research ethics, which some of them share equal issues related to human research and animal research, followed by animal research ethics and research proposal. So this is the contents. Basically, you want by the end of this talk and sharing, so everybody will be able to categorize the kind of research that is called human research or animal research, the criteria that is required in order to submit the proposal to be sent for individual committees, which is animal research as well as human research, and the requirement during submission, the post-approval process, and incorporating the supervision of the above process. Whereas in research proposal, we'll touch an overall overview on the type of research and related research design, preparing a decent research proposal and certain type of research that require a certain permission or application that was also being touched in the first two part of the talk. And then to match between analysis and research objective, and a bit on the preparing the subjects of. Okay, when you talk about ethics, I think everyone can Google to or look for any broad reference. This Merriam-Webster dictionary says is actually a set of moral principles, a theory of system of moral values, and people may say ethics is coming from the heart, or ethical conduct literally means simply from the right things, right time, with a fair and respect to the others, and to have a good life. And we're talking about rights and responsibilities. So in other words, actually, it's a common sense. So, but only if everyone understands what is rights and what is really a common sense. Because as we can see, this guy obviously do not understand what is common sense. Then when you talk about research ethics, it brings along something that is additional issues, and in many cases a variety of situations that may come into play during preparing for the research, conducting the research, and after the research has been done. It is tend to be more complex, and things may get entangled between what is in your heart in contrast to certain sets of standards, regulation, and probably laws that are relevant to research. Researchers can easily miss some of the unseen aspect of research ethics while indulging with the enthusiasm and focus in the research project. And then if you are not careful, you may stumble to difficulties. So researchers must read around the research subject thoroughly and address them accordingly. Because finally, who is responsible for research is actually the researcher in conducting human research or animal research, so that we should know how best is to balance between the scientific demands and also the ethics component of it, let alone the personal interest. And of course, many stakeholders have a different level of interest in our research, and they could be sponsors, be it from government, NGOs, or industries, also relevant authorities. For example, if you are doing clinical trials on drugs or vaccines that soon to be registered, as I'm coming from the medical school. And it's important to note that ethics committees, or some also called institutional review boards, is registered under Ministry of Health if you are doing research in human. And we are also, for example, Japan USM is one of the IRBs and are audited regularly by these authorities, especially when talk about NPRA, National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Authority. And they have all the legal power to suspend or shut down any institution that violates their regulations. So what is human research? Human research, whenever the research involves either the human itself or the human data, whether it really related to collecting samples, conducting surveys, changing participant environment, administrating medicine, of course, when you talk about interventional study, or even interview, or administrating a psychological test, right? That is also considered as human research. I can recommend you to go this good tools that is also what we call prepared by the US authority to help you to have a good screening on how to decide whether your studies related to human research or not. This is something that you can always use online as a screening method. And then when you talk about animal research, in general, the study of animals for scientific and medical discovery, then it's called animal research. In Malaysia, there's a specific definition when we talk about when do we say the research involve human research. So in this Animal Protection Act, it says that anything other than human, including whatever animals, birds, aquatics, all right, with the exception of the wildlife, that is considered as if you do activity research, that is called animal research. Important to note that invertebrate like the worms and all these insects are not included under the jurisdiction of USM, CUC, or human research in Malaysia. So things get more complicated when nowadays we have research in the new era where you have more complex, integrated, you have transdisciplinary research, and some of the research go across the national boundaries because it can be jointly sponsored. And recently there's increasing activities of research using the social media as a platform, as a tool sometimes, and also a genomic research. So this situation has added more complexity of research that is coming to universities and even in many sectors as well. So why do we need ethics of approval? Because number one, of course, as USM academician, the institutions demands it. It's part of the research policy and also is part of the grant approval, and also become important point for your promotion as a key performance index. Okay, so because with the good grant, you can get better solution for your research, for the next research, for example, and then you can have a good budget to hire RAs or assistants, okay? And perhaps those days you can present your research, you can travel, but now probably not so because of the restriction and limitation. So we can see that there's some amount of money of the budget has been spent towards publication fee. Okay, so
we can plan how to help you. Perhaps we can give you.
Okay, thank you. All right. So in order for us to recruit or start our study, then you need to have subject, either human, in the case of human research, or human data, or even animal as your subjects. Then you have to get an approval. Okay. Beyond research, even in the animal what do you call situation, even for teaching and demonstration testing, so you need to have some form of approval from the animal center before it can be used for this purpose, not only for research. Number four, of course, and you as a lecturer, as a academician, you also need to supervise, and students will need to submit their thesis before they get graduated. So thesis require a proposal to be done for their research, and propose if the research and proposal related to human research or animal research, then of course you need to submit to relevant review board. And of course, if you want to publish, then we have seen the increasing trend of editors for established journals are demanding for ethics clearance, even though some of the reports will actually belong to what you call a project or research. They may not be require ethics clearance, but they do ask for approval letter from so these editors from journal, they do ask for approval letter from respective ethical clearance. And we have been, entertaining this for quite some times in the past 35 years. So what about USM research policy? Yes, we do have Dasar and Etika Penyelidikan USM. This is the latest one, 2022. It says that all research related to human or animal research need to follow a certain codes of research ethics and have to be submitted accordingly, as well as it should follow the other policy, including the biosecurity session and so on. And this is example of the circulation that was sent much earlier on, 2018, because this is following the earlier version of the Dasar Etika. All right. So for ethical approval and also biosecurity approval, so we have this. If you have research related to human research, then you have to send to Japan. If you have research that related to animal studies, then you have to send to IA UC or Jawatankuasa Penjagaan dan Penggunaan Haiwan USM. And if you do research related to organism that is living modified organism, then you have to send for these committees. So basically, if you notice, any researchers or any principal investigator that is from USM, either student or staff, then you need to, if you do this research related to these three committees, then you have to send this. Or when the samples or subjects is recruited from USM, either human subject, human data, or animal subjects, okay, or the living modified organism. And another criteria is when it is done in USM for the human research, okay, or when the fund is coming from USM. You may have done it somewhere else outside USM, but because it is done using USM fund, then you have to submit your proposal to respective committees or review boards. So this is a repetition that I've mentioned what it means by human research, animal research, and research involving living modified organism. Okay. But there are also exemptions. This is the example, but not limited to, for human research. For example, if you do research that does not involve human involvement at all, you need to say there's no direct involvement, there's no human data involvement, human material, human sample, then it can be considered as exemption. Or even to this is common among researchers from laboratory. They do a lot of research in cell lines, so they do not require a review by Japan or any ethical review board of human research. And also for systemic reviews and meta-analysis, because it's just dealing with data that is already published, whether they require permission or not, that's in the second issue. From the authorship of the data, but if you do this, then it is not required for this kind of research or publication does not require review. But as I said earlier on, many journals still insist, and my journal editor still insists for the manuscript of systemic review to have ethical review board clearance. So then it is it can be provided by us for human research ethics committee. It can be also purely audits, provided it is not going to be used outside the institution. Then if it's going to be published, if it's going to be shared with other outside institution, then you need to be submitted to ethics committee. All right. So what you need to do is that you need to, if you're not sure or if you want to ask for this, you are clear, then you can ask submit, but not the manuscript, but the whole project, especially the full proposal rather than abstract, because we want to look at detail on the methodology how this data is collected, what kind of data, is there any sensitive data, is there any, whether the de-identification of the human data is adequate, right? So that it is not easily identifiable, then it is clear, all right? Normally, we will try to respond within 1 or 2 weeks. So, of course, when you talk about research preparation, it should not, what do you call, consider the ethics component of it. It should not be considered only during the ethics committee presentation or meeting. You should have a good thinking process from the beginning of ideas of doing research, because in the end, the responsibility of that protocol, that project, and that research is back to the investigator or the researcher. Okay, so it should be incorporated from the beginning of planning on ideas of the research. So a little bit on the Human Research Ethics Committee for USM. It's actually under the term Institutional Review Board. So because there's also independent ethics committee, especially in the private and in the US, for example, they have many independent ethics committee board. But for USM, it's part of the Institutional Review Board because under the umbrella of USM. So the main objective, you can see here, the main part of the objective and aim and goal for this ethics committee is to protect the participant. When we protect participants, in a way, it's also protect researchers and protect institution. If you look for in the internet, there's so many things that has happened in the past many years ago, and even in the last 5 to 10 years, or even last 2 years, there's issues for certain studies that has breached the ethical what they call issues. So these are the basic principle of the ethics component of research. It should be providing good and not providing harm. It should provide the autonomy of the participant, especially when there is active participation of the subject, and it should be fair and justice to them. So this is a brief milestone for Japan, just to say, to highlight that, of course, it initially started with medical school in about 30 years ago, and then it's after the university has embarked on expanding the research component of in the medical field. So we get what they call registered and endorsed by this Office for Human Research Protection, and we extend further to expand the function initially for the school, and it was placed under a Vice Chancellor of USM. And then we got a few local as well as international recognition and accreditation by the Authority of Pharmaceutical Review for Malaysia, as well as international WHO project for what we call Seeker Perkat. I will tell you a bit more after this. So the composition of Japan members are actually members that coming from spans of different research area. There could be nurses, social scientists, a dentist, dietitian, and not only medical doctors, and also sports science, and they can be affiliated to USM, or also can be non-affiliated. We have few members that are from few other universities and also research center in Malaysia. And we also have a few members that is expert in research methodology. So at the moment, it's mainly coming from School of Medical Sciences and as well as School of Health Science. But we are welcome also, so whoever want to contribute in terms of statistical expertise and from a different school. You can always nominate yourself or nominate your colleague, for example, HOD or Dean, so that we can together provide a necessary and betterment for research environment at USM. And this is part of the international requirement. Our member will have a reasonable representation of gender and also members from the public to represent as a non-scientific members. This is what we call layperson or community representation. And since especially we are dealing with many medical and health research, so we also have members that represent Ministry of Health Hospital, which is Hospital Raja Perempuan Zainab. And all these members will have to undergo compulsory training at least twice a year, right? Either internal or external from international what you call forum, for example, this FERCAP, and also relevant authority that also audit and come to us regularly for audit. And so members are also have opportunity to have experience of surveying or looking at other ethical committee, not only locally but also abroad. And we also have what we call non-affiliated members in the JPM. Okay. Sorry, this is independent consultant. They are not members. Sorry. They can be USM staff or academician, but because of their expertise in the field, so we can also invite them. The only thing is that they will not have the power to vote or decide during the board session or the meeting session. Okay. So as I put here, we need more reviewers. We are welcome voluntary, this voluntary works. Of course, it may provide some point in your CV and KPI, but it's basically is part of our duty as academician to provide opinion and recommendation so that the research can be done scientifically sound and ethically right. So this is what I mentioned. The seeker is actually a WHO project, and then it is what they call allocated with different group or from different part of the world. So we belong under this group, which is the Asia Pacific chapters. So that's why we have this FERCAP, which is Forum for Ethical Review Committees, basically aiming to increase the capacity of review for human research. And this is the what our initiative, USM together with MOH Ethics Committee, initiated in 2015 to have a kind of harmonizing ethic review. Although because we noticed that a different ethical review have their own strength and weakness, especially between the ethics committee in the service hospital as compared to university hospital. So this is an effort that we try to improve year after year on the level of review. So how does we work as a JPM, as an IRB? So we have pre-submission, submission, and post-submission and post-approval. And then we do advise strongly that all researchers to submit all required form. And as a supervisor, we need to guide our students to pay full attention of this certain form. No more express annotation. Okay. Useful commentary document like diagram and flyers is also required to be submitted when you when the student or you yourself submit the project. So this is the roughly the idea of submission, approval, and process or steps. You can always visit to this website. And what we have tried to improve is that in the last year we have managed to establish the submission, the online submission. so that we can better monitor the submission process, so that we can provide review recommendation in a better way. So at the moment, this is an in-house project that is what you call developed by our PPKT, and everyone I think understand they are actually really tight. So, but still they are able to come up with this what they call online component of submission. So we plan to expand this for the review, the component of review, the component of discussion as an online documentation, but things is going to be part by part to be ready soon, inshallah. So if you have student that is plan to submit your submission, so it is important for the student, or even you yourself, you want to study, be familiar with what kind of research that you're going to do. In the protocol, it has to be clear. In the consent form, it has to be clear. And you can always look at the several templates that is available on the website, JPM. The format of what they call research proposal, either is medical or health research, whether it's interventional or observational. Even for social and behavioral research, there's also a template that you can follow. And there's also whole genome study format in terms of proposal as well as informed consent. You can use that as a template. Remember, this is template require necessary and appropriate modification to suit your study, not just copy wholly and use without appropriate modification. So this is to ensure that the type of project is appropriately chosen between, especially if you talk about human research, whether it is interventional or non-interventional or observation, whether it require ICF informed consent form is required, whether you doing health science research or social research. And nowadays we are seeing increasing number, although not many, a very complex big project that involve both components, laboratory, medical and health science, as well as social science. And the site could be in USM or outside USM or both. Okay. This is something that is I would really recommend, in which the proposal should have some form of screening, so that when it come into ethics committee, it is not that too raw for the reviewer to have providing to provide appropriate recommendation and comments. So correction should be that's supposed to be made should be reviewed and ensure that it is already addressed, whatever comments or correction that has been discussed during the department presentation. And endorsement is required, okay, for this kind of proposal that is submitted by students. With the exception of industry sponsored, this is something that it is widely practiced because the reason being is that the industry sponsored research normally they have gone through rigorous screening and discussion before they send over to ethics committee. This is an example for a guidance or templates dissertation for students. I choose this from medical school. Of course, you can always look check with your own school for the relevant templates or guideline in preparation for their MMed. Okay, and this is something that I would like to share with you. There's although it is actually a reporting guide, but you can use the reporting guide, the component of it, the format of it, of the research, either it is randomized trial, observational study, even systemic review, as part of your process in proposal preparation. So it is good to have this idea from the beginning of proposal preparation. And interestingly, this so-called platform, it is regularly updated, and you can see there's so many things that's been added in this platform or site. So a little bit of a key important element that always been confused. Some may still not clear what is the meaning of interventional research and as opposed to non-interventional research. So in principle, if your research is actually doing the activity that is not part of the standard practice, then it's called interventional. Interventional can be giving drugs, doing surgery, or withholding drugs, or not doing surgery, or even psychological treatment, psychological advice, social intervention, for example. It still can be an interventional research, or it could be a community intervention. So it is what they call regarded as interventional research, right? So the rest, if it's nothing to do with this part, then it is non-interventional or observational. And something that is commonly missed is that if you are doing observational, you do nothing to the patient treatment, you do nothing to the psychological what you call component of it. But if you are doing a non-standard lab test or non-standard imaging test, then you should consider the budget. Who will pay this? Even though the test is, for example, if you are doing the test for certain X-ray, for example, I can only mention what I'm familiar with. But this X-ray is not commonly practiced or for that situation of medical condition. Then you have to consider that even though this is not interventional, it is observational, but who will pay for the X-ray? Who will pay for the ultrasound? If let's say you are using ultrasound, which is not part of the standard practice. Okay. So this is another thing that is commonly missed in proposal related to interventional research. You have to highlight to us, to the committee, what is the standard of care as compared to the intended or the planned intervention that you're going to do. The intervention, as I said, can be withdrawal of the certain treatment or withdrawal of certain procedure, right? Because we need to justify how is it fair for the participant to undergo this, to involve in this research. This comes to what we call the status of clinical equipoise. Mean to say there is no clear-cut better or worse between the two groups if you're talking about comparison of two groups. And another point in one of the common missing point in interventional research, also true for non-interventional, is that the duration of involvement. If that is an active participation of the human subject, then you have to explain how long does it take for each procedure, each visit, and the whole project. Maybe 1 year. In that 1 year, maybe 3 times each visit. They have to spend 2 hours. Then it has to be considered and it should be counted in. What will be is there any amount of reimbursement that you want or token of appreciation that you want to provide, so that participant is not being neglected of the void of time that they have to spend in your research. And you have to declare and address conflict of interest. Conflict of interest is not something that it is not allowed at all. Yes, it can be allowed, but you need to make sure how do you address that, so that when you conduct this study, the data is well guarded in terms of the integrity of the data, it's well validated, and it's accurate. Right? It is not biased. All right. And identify and address what could be the potential vulnerability issues. People may understand what is vulnerability vulnerable group, children, mentally ill, elderly, the demented person, okay, or yours, what do you call, subordinates like your students, your staff, maybe you are the HOD or dean, your staff, or it could be your patient. So it doesn't mean that you cannot do research for this, but you have to really make sure how to uphold their voluntariness, that they can say no without being jeopardized or being withheld of their rights. Okay. So there's also another way of looking at vulnerability, which is called contextual vulnerability. It could be cognitive, like elderly person, children, or it could be institutional because of the institution, like in the army, in the prison. If you do research, you must be sure that they have the given the opportunity to understand what kind of research they are being invited to, and they have all the freedom to say no without being what do you call, deny their right to say no, or their right to be what do you call, treated equally with justice and fair, right? Differential vulnerability is informal vulnerability. For example, husband and wife, okay, in which if you do research that require the wife providing such an information, okay, so you need to identify how are you going to address that the wife willing to provide information without being what do you call, in the psychological threat or danger of giving the information, for giving the information. And also medical vulnerability, if patient, for example, you're trying to look for whether suitable or not to do the research in that kind of patient, especially cancer patients, okay, when they are already in the advanced stage of cancer and has been treated many line of treatment. So there's an element of desperado in this patient. So if you're not careful enough in explaining the situation to this patient, then their willingness to join your research basically can be clouded by the state of their medical vulnerability. And so for the economic and social vulnerability, whether they are poor, they are being isolated, they are being labeled as like a second class community, and so on, society. Another important point that is always sometimes student supervised by lecturer have a bigger grant and you have many students, but during the presentation it is not mentioned whether this part of the bigger project with one bigger grant. So it is important to disclose this so that it is clear, there's no hanky-panky that between the research earlier on. So that it is transparent, okay, to everybody that this research is part of the continuity of the bigger project or part of the bigger project. Okay. What about informed consent? As I mentioned earlier, if there is an interventional research, for sure you require informed consent. And when there is even is not interventional, but it require active or ongoing data collection, we call it primary data collection, either from the patient itself by asking question or interview, that is called for informed consent requirement, right? If the data is already available, it's already recorded, and this is what we call recorded data or secondary data, either in the medical records, if we are talking about medical and health research, then you do not require informed consent from patient, but you have to ask permission from what we call data guardian. For hospital USM, the data guardian is the hospital director, and so forth for other data that you're going to do. And the data, when you do, it should be de-identified. You need to have a certain numbers that is not directly identifiable to which data it belongs to. For example, there should be no name, there should be no IC, no passport. Okay, there should not be any registered number, for example, student number or staff number that they can directly link to that kind of data, especially so sensitive data. Okay, there will be more slides on this at the later part of this talk. So post submission, what happened is that once you have gather all documents that you want to submit, then the staff or secretariat staff of JPM, as well as from Animal Ethics Committee, ethics will review whether it is complete or not, right? And then if it's complete, the proposal will be reviewed at by the chairperson, and we have a panel chairs. We have 6 altogether, or member secretary, to look at whether it falls under low risk category of research or high, more than low risk. If it's low risk, then it is categorized as for expedited review. And for more than that, more than low risk, then it is called for full board review. We'll come to that later, what it does mean by expedited and full board. Okay, except for undergraduate project. Undergraduate project, provided it is low risk, okay, it will be reviewed like a lump sum as a package. So there's a few examples that is already being actively doing, like in the School of Health Sciences, and also there's a few programs in the School of Sciences that use this pathway. Okay. So what is that expedited and full board? So when the proposal is considered as low risk and it is eligible to be reviewed and expedited, this is the criteria. Does not involve the population is vulnerable, does not involve the collection of sensitive data that's stigmatized, use adequate anonymizing protocol, and even you take blood, it should not more than 30 cc. Okay, so what happened is that once it's submitted, it will be reviewed by 2 reviewers, and the reviewer will send their comment. And once the comment is ready, normally within 2 weeks, that is the deadline, comment from the reviewers, and then 2 members will sit down in a session to review few proposal that is categorized as expedited review. Okay, because we require only 2, so we do not have to involve many members that have their own busy schedule. Okay, this is expedited new submission. So once they have submit and approve, for example, in the situation the submission went through well, then if the proposal or the project is still going on, and then they want to ask for continue to extend the project, then it will be reviewed as expedited as well. Okay. So this is what happened during the expedited review. Based on the primary reviewer comment, it will, if it's both are approved, then during the discussion it will be approved. It's minor revision that it will send to email documentation. If need clarification, then the researcher will be called to the expedited review, or you can call it mini review meeting. Yeah. But if it's major unaffordable, the proposal will be forwarded to full board review. Okay, whatever decision, it will be endorsed in full board review for all projects. So this is what we call full board review. This is the criteria. It's a kind of opposite of the criteria for expedited review. So as you can see, there will be more number of panels to be present during the full board. At the moment, our quorum is 7. So you need to have 7 members to be available during the full board review, as compared to only 2 for expedited review. And it is require a lot of coordination and organization between the secretariat and the members, because everybody is busy. So so researcher can maybe call or not to meeting. It is not because of the person itself, but according to the research, the proposal, whether it's involved sensitive issue, whether it's randomized control trial, whether it's intervention or not, okay, whether it's, and then depend on comment made by reviewer. If you think that there's a lot more information that require what they call live interaction, then we try not to delay, then we call. And also some researcher, there are certain deadline that have urgently to be met. So we also entertain this and depend on the request of the researcher and the availability of our panels. So don't get disheartened if you are called. All right, during the meeting we discuss and make comment, and researcher present and provide clarification. If you think the researcher does not agree with the recommendation by the panel or reviewer, then you can always say so. It's not something what do you call cast to stone, except if you are violating certain basic principle of research ethics. So some people say defending ethics committee full board is something like fighting. No, it is meant to be role of facilitation, because our aim is to protect the participant or subject and protect the researcher and eventually protecting the USM. So so this is basically, I just want to share what is supposed to be done by the primary reviewer. They review within 10 working days or 14 calendar days in the sound. This is the area that they want. They have to review and they have to make a recommendation, not a decision. They recommend, but it will be decided in the full board. Okay. So one of the things is that always run in researchers' mind. Why is that ethics committee bother about methods? This is why. Wrong methods will put possibly unnecessary risk to subject. If you take more than you need of blood sample, for example, if you do a procedure consecutively for 6, 7, 9 procedures, which can be rearranged accordingly. For example, if the method is incorrect, then you may get invalid data, or then it lead to inappropriate analysis and not publishable, or perhaps if published, it's published something that is not good and provide a bad reflection to not only to you but also to the university, and then you are wasting time for everybody's time, effort, and also money. So again, the same principle that we should please to. This is to highlight that doing research with good ethics is also important. It's also highlighted here: scientific knowledge, understanding the priorities. Okay, and as for example, the method should also be looked into this. And then I think this one, the Malaysia Code of Conduct, responsible conduct in research, has been highlighted by Dr. Hanati earlier on in other what do you call talk. So this is what I meant by mentioned earlier on. Only 2% in expedited meeting. This is full board. Why is it repeated the same thing? Okay. So after after submission, after the review, the proposal can be rejected, disapproved. This is very rare. This is very rare. I think hardly one a year. Or it could be a resubmission. Okay, is a resubmission meaning the whole range need to be overhauled, or major modification, especially when it's involved. The method is not scientifically sound and potentially cause ethical violation, for example. Or it can be minor revision that can be reviewed by reviewers because it requires some scientific knowledge to be able to review the correction. Or sometimes it's just typo error here and there, and then it can be reviewed at secretariat level based on the comment made in the meeting. Then the approval letter can be provided. Normally, the official feedback that you get, whether you get official feedback whether this decision normally we provide within 14 working days, because we need to go through each and every minute that is discussed, so that the researcher will get the detailed itemized issues or that is being addressed in the meeting. More important thing is that you have to the student or your student or you have to address every single point that is highlighted in the feedback. You can always rebut if you do not agree with a good rationale and reference. Okay, and submit the revised version not later than 2 months. If it's more than 2 months, we will consider this as a new submission. All right, this is what I said earlier on. Okay. All right, so there's typing error. It should be 15 days, not 14 working days. So post-approval, there's a additional element need to be done as well. Doesn't mean that once approved and that's it, bye-bye, nothing else. No, because by international standard, ethics committee can only approve with a duration of 1 year. Okay, and it has been audited many times. We sometimes we try to negotiate with the FERCAP that whether it is for certain type of low risk research, whether it can be done, it can be approved for 2 years. They say no, it should be 1 year. So what happened is that during your running of research, there may be some protocol amendment that you want to do. And important to note that any amendment can only be executed, only is approved by the ethics committee. In our case, is USM, right? So you can use this form to justify why you need to do this amendment. Changes, whether it's going to provide a better risk certification and justify the change. Okay. All right. So the amendment, if it's just of what you call office changes like address, adding one more researcher part of your team, so we consider as expedited, doesn't need to send to reviewers. It will be approved straight away at the level of chair when we receive the full documentation, and then we provide the approval within 1 or 2 weeks. So this is what I mentioned. Okay, maximum granted is 1 year. Okay, it is important that before end of the expiring of the approval, the team, your student or you yourself need to have a kind of set of reminder. We'll try to have this kind of auto reminder to notify the reviewer, notify the PI or researcher soon. But it's still in the process. Inshallah, we'll try to do that, provided our PKT staff able to complete those module of online thing sooner. Okay, this is what we call continuing review application. So at the end, near the end of the expiry approval, then you send it. It is really just very simple form, 1 page, basically summary of what happened, what is the progress of your research in terms of recruitment, data analysis, and so on. Final report, this is something that always a major weakness among researchers. They tend to forget, after they complete the research, they forget to submit the final report, so that we know that the study is already closed, and with some summary of the findings. It's not so lengthy. This is 1 page again. And there's also protocol non-compliant, especially important in interventional research. so that we know that even if the protocol non-compliant is done, it should be done because on the protection of the safety of the human participant rather than for your own convenience. All right. You can do this one is different from amendment. Meaning to say, if let's say initially you should check blood pressure only once every month for that particular research, but because of your concern, you want to do a blood pressure early if patient have symptom, for example. This is a hypothetical. You can do that with justification to protect a participant, but you need to submit this protocol non-compliant. Then you may want to change the protocol with the submission of amendment. All right. Okay. Okay. There are normally the protocol non-compliant is not major, but we do have a few cases in the last 3-4 years research that have come into our attention that violates a major issue. So it happened. We also entertain queries or complaints from participants, or other researchers, or any members, or even from the public if they want to complain anything that is suspicious, so that we can proceed with necessary investigation and action. So, okay, right. And then we also have site visit, selection of site visit. I think probably this one not that crucial for you all. And it's important, as I said earlier on, your research may involve certain level of stakeholders. Then you may want to have a schedule when you want to report to your stakeholders. For example, especially so if you are doing interventional research, randomized control trial sponsored by a company, then you normally has been set earlier on how frequent you want to send the report for SAE outside your center or within your center. If the SAE, which is serious adverse event, that serious adverse event, not effect, serious adverse event, any event that is serious enough require admission or prolonged of stay that lead to death, okay, need to be reported as soon as possible to the sponsor, not to Japan, but you have to acknowledge to ethics committee within 7 days. This is the international standard. And for on-site, meaning if research done in hospital USM, you need to send to 7 days to ethics committee Japan. But if it's occur same study, but since the multi-center, but it's occur outside USM, then there's no point of for you to urgently send to ethics committee. But you can do this within 3 to 6 months. It's okay. Special situation that's always been asked by students and researchers. What about international students who doing research in home country? Yes, it still require ethics approval. It fulfill the criteria of human research because it is belong the category of required to be submitted to USM ethics committees. We do have a special situation where we try to expedite the process of review and approval for certain disaster. But for example, last time we have COVID-19 related research. We have major flood in Kelantan in 2015 kind of research. So of course it will add more burden to our staff and reviewers, but we try our best to help USM coming forward to doing research. So for undergraduate research, because we know they have a very limited time to do research, so we try to accommodate. One member attend 10 proposal, for example, 5 proposal, for example, at one goes in the big hall, and it should be low risk project. For the coordinator of certain program that require final project and want to do human research, please pay attention that the research should be low risk. because it's not fair for the student to do high risk kind of project in terms of ethically as well as scientifically. And what we'll do is we will make a very special arrangement so that it can be. It is important for the student's proposal to be reviewed by supervisor and perhaps have a discussion at the department level before it comes to so-called ethics committee review for undergraduate research. And we even for postgraduate, for certain specific program, like some of the master program that require to have like a mixed-mode research, for example, they have very limited time. We do also entertain case by case. If you are if you your school think you need to have this approach, then please contact Encik Azlan, and then we will try to do a workup accordingly. The next question is, if you are studying outside, do you need to require ethics review for USM? Yes. And on top of, if you do research in hospital, okay, we can mute that mic. Okay, so if you do research outside USM, do you have to ask ethics review approval from Japan? Yes, but you also need to get approval from that particular associated ethics review board or IR institutional review board, or maybe independent. If you don't have it, then you can use the nearby ethics review board, or if it's in Malaysia, then you can always use a USM approval. But for if it's under the Ministry of Health, then you have to send to their what we call medical research ethics committee, MREC. Why do we need to do this? Because as I said, IRB means institutional review board. So anything about ethical issues or related research that within USM by USM staff using participant USM, it is responsibility of USM. All right. Anything related to that research will be reviewed and action taken by a USM. So that is fine. Number two, that as I alluded earlier on, based on our regular discussion for the ethics committee in Malaysia, we agreed that we need to have some form of standardization. So what we'll do, and harmonization, sorry, what we'll do in on top of trying to harmonizing the review capacity and review quality. So for those who have approval from other board, we will try to expedite the process accordingly. That's what we can agree at the moment. So timeline, this is for your guidance. So normally from the start of complete document submission until the first decision, either reject ke approve ke major revision ke, for expedited review 6 weeks, meaning low risk kind of research and so on. For the full board review, more than low risk, and then it will be 8 weeks. Okay. Why we say this? Because after the first decision, whether rejected or resubmission or major revision, the time taken by PI will not be counted in this so-called timeline. This is the other timeline in which we post it in our online SOP. You can review this on our website, and this will be reviewed by auditors like from MOH, authority like MPRA, and also from international review. Okay, that's all about the component of gender research, general as well as human research. Maybe we take a break for 2 minutes before we continue the animal research part of this talk. Okay, shall we continue? Alright. Okay, kita for the question is yang tu kita collect all the question first, then we will answer. Actually, that one I need to confirm with the apa ni Prof Aida lah, because she's from Animal Ethics Committee. Okay. In fact, most of the slide for animal research is coming from her. So, okay, animal ethics research. Okay, the current scenario, there's an increasing awareness and concern about the use of animal in research. So that came along the Animal Welfare Act and the subsequent revision afterwards. So, you know, animal cannot talk like human. They cannot complain. They cannot. We know we can observe they are not well. They are upset, for example. So that's why we need some form of regulation. Not like human. In Malaysia, there's no bound to legal bound yet for ethics committee in human, but in animal, yes. It's not that we consider animal is much more what they call taken care compared to human, but because of certain weakness that they may not be adequately represent, even in Islam teaching as well, we have to take care carefully our animal as well. So hence this acts has come into place. So it says that no person shall use animal research unless there are reasonable steps taken to ensure their condition and so on, and that they should receive reasonable treatment to alleviate an unnecessary or unreasonable pain or distress. So it is important. And no person except school shall use animal for research, testing, and teaching unless the person is licensed. Okay, so this is important as well in animal review board. And then there's a fine there to the 20,000 or not more than 100,000, and even you can get in prison for if you're violating these acts. So if you want to do animal research, you should plan very well. You should supervising your students that they know, they have read, they have understand literature review as usual, as general, but pertaining to the methods and procedures, because you are dealing with things that can experience pain and distress and so on, and obtain the approval, and the researcher or even the student need to be trained of how to take care of animals rather than just performing the experiment alone. So it is important for the students need to know the general care of a particular animal that you're going to use on top of your detail about what is the research that you're going to do. So for USM, we have this IAUC, that is the animal to the monitor and review the animal research proposal. IAUC stands for Institutional Animal Care and Use of Committee, and it's also called Animal Ethics Committee in Malaysia. In bahasa, it's called Jawatan Penjagaan dan Penggunaan Haiwan for USM. So their members, the different category, they have person who's qualified as veterinary science. They have 5 at the moment, and the person who is also has an experience of using animal scientific of teaching activities, and also experience in further animal welfare. And this category is basically the layperson. So why is it important to follow the steps? Because you in Malaysia, you need to realize that there's this code of practice which is called My Code. So following this My Code, you need to have a written proposal for this animal research. and it may be your proposal or your research may be revoked if you are not following according to the micro. I think you can always download this freely on the internet. Okay, so the important element, the three principal elements that is to be incorporated in the proposal preparation for animal research. Now, the three are replacement, reduction, and refinement. Replacement means you replace animal using human volunteer tissue cells. Whether if you can find that, then why not using this alternative rather than use that particular animal. Okay, although there's some studies that they cannot replace, then it should be done carefully and reduce unnecessary use of animal and distress that we inflict on those animals. Okay. All right. Next is reduction. So we need to say reduce as much as possible to the minimum number of animal necessary. If you can happily demonstrate that with 10 mouse, for example, why you ask for 20? Okay. And again, should not repeat the same study that has been done in the same animal, for example. Okay. You really have to justify why do you want to that number and why do you have to repeat if it's necessary. Maybe there's a conflicting evidence of published data, for example, then is that you really have to justify. Okay, then perhaps you can try to have a sharing of this animal with a few studies, for example, if it's feasible, in order to minimize the number of animals used. Okay, and refinement means to say the technology, the technique, the methodology of doing the research need to be refined. Whether you if you require some form of analgesia to reduce the pain, anesthesia so that they do not feel the pain at all. Okay, and to have to predetermine size how much you want to observe to the what extent. Okay, and plan how do you terminate the animal, for example, in a more we call painless as possible. All right. Okay, and you need to have proper cage that is clean, food provided, drinks, and okay, in their when they're involved in the study as a part of the general care of the human. So you can always look into this website, and what is that provided is that the proposal will be assessed by two parties. One is from scientific reviewers or reviewer, and also by the veterinary officers. And some of the ethical consideration is that it is the welfare of the animal should be looked into, and the appropriate facilities and access to veterinary care. If it's, for example, if you don't want to sacrifice them early, what will you do if they fall sick, for example? How often the veterinary service will visit to that facility to take care of the animal, and all right. And if you do a repeated surgical, can you do without repeating the procedure the same animal if possible? Okay. And of course, those who handle the animals should be adequately trained on taking care of those animals. Right? There's a guideline here. It's also freely available to be downloaded. On the principle, how do you, if you want to assess the toxicity study of those animals? So what happened? The same decision making. If the proposal is submitted, whether it's rejected, modification or correction. So I think this one require much earlier submission of correction, 2 weeks as compared to human research. Okay, and investigator may be invited to attend the discussion to present and discuss as what happened in human research as well. Okay, student, principal investigator or the lecturer should attend the meeting. the respective student are encouraged to attend, but they should not attend alone. They should come with their supervisors. So remember, supervisors, don't let the student present themselves alone, because some of the information, some of the idea may not be well conveyed by the student. Okay, you can visit the USM Animal Ethics Committee website to see their proposed date of meeting. Okay, and this is the requirement as mentioned earlier on. So what happened if the study, again, same manner, if the human research is done somewhere else, outside USM, outside Malaysia? Okay, the student need to get both clearance. One is the USM IAC, as well as a respective ethics committee of animal research on that particular place where the animal is placed. Okay, all right. And this is the detail. You can always refer this at the website as well. Okay, so supervising research. This is an example of what we have in medical school. So we have a few layers of supervising. We have the immediate main supervisor and co-supervisor, and we also have coordinator for certain group of students for postgraduate, and the head department will be the overall supervising what do you call members or panel. It can be different from school to school. So this is an example that I quote that is practiced in medical school in Korea. So basically, in general, supervisor's role is to ensure that our student is well equipped with the knowledge and skill to run the study, right? Right from the proposal preparation, conducting the research, and what do you call, submitting the reports. So incomplete process can be included because it is not detailed enough. There's a language issues, grammar issue that is badly affect the nature of sentence, understanding of the sentence. Okay, and many of those, especially in human research, they do not recognize, unable to recognize what are the vulnerability issues. They may recognize vulnerability group, but they sometimes they are not clear what type of vulnerability, how to address that. Okay, and in animal research, they do not do thorough literacy research. This is one of the common finding that was highlighted by the Animal Ethics Committee. And specifically for animal ethics research, they ask application is only and only made by the staff rather than student. Okay, some of the form still can be filled up by the student, but supervisor must check thoroughly, not just sign. I think it's also true for human research. Majority of supervisor, they look through, but sometimes it's either the supervisor overlook the email, or sometimes the students send a very last minute, tomorrow nak submit, hari ni baru hantar proposal. Then you have no time. So you have to remind beforehand that you need to review so that any issues related to scientific soundness and the ethics component can be well taken care of. Okay, all right. So another 30-second break. I need to reply urgent message. Okay, coming back. So the next one is research proposal. Oh, we have only 8 minutes. I think in general, many of you have encountered this diagram, this sequence, all right? The steps taken required for when you do research proposal. So basically, it's about why do you want to do research? So you need to introduce whoever read your proposal or a student's proposal need to be oriented well. Why is that you are interested to do? What was the problem list? What was the issues that initiate your intention to do this research? What does it matter? Why is it matter? What is going to be significant of doing this research in this area? What are the knowledge gap that or weakness of the previously published data, or there's something that is overlooked in that data that you hope that you're going to improve. So these are the questions that you want to do. Then only you can talk about how are you going to conduct your research in terms of methodology. When are you going to start in terms of your timeline or Gantt chart? Okay, so the study scope, the problem statement, the study justification, then you can outline your research question, the study objective, and the methodology that you want to do. Okay, so again, same thing in the different presentation, your interest, your knowledge, and then you look for background information, what are the gaps, what are the priority set that make up the conceptual of your research, and supervisor oversee, guide them on how to prepare this research question so that you can prepare research proposal. Be mindful, I always encourage my students and my colleague here, do look into this very good what do you call a website that can be the hub of templates that you can always refer, so that you can prepare upfront what would be your research look like. And this is an example of what is bad title, and as compared to the best title, is try as specific as possible so that it does not confuse the reader what kind of research that you are going to do. Okay, be specific. And background, many students are sometimes not clear what are the things that you want to put in the background. So basically, as you may encounter any salesperson from insurance company or want to sell their product, create interest. Why you want to do the study. Overlay the broad foundation of the problems that leads to the study. Place the study in a higher context or in a higher view that then focus down to that lead to the area of interest in that particular research. And of course, you need to be brief in historical backdrop, need not to be so lengthy. Okay, this is sometimes the soft skill that need to be required, need to be acquired by the students. Okay, all right. So this is an example of the background to study. You want to talk about physical activity or activity. You talk about social environment as well as occupational factors with reference, and you talk about the particular topic, sedentary occupation that may lead to physical activity, club job, and so on. Then perhaps this could be your focus of population study. And then you talk about the problem statement. What was the issues that is according to priorities, involving what category of person, when it is matters of the problem arise, where it would be the area of you want to focus, and so on. This lead to research question and later on forming your objective. So in the end, its significance study can be properly derived, why the study is important, and finding that can be possibly contribute by your research, okay, and how does it make a difference to the community at large. This is an example for the lifestyle activity, and this is some of the approach that people do using the SMART goals. The objective should be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timely. I think it's also what do you call? This is mainly perhaps for quantitative kind of research, but some of the qualitative component may be useful as well. So to describe, to compare would be the common verb that we use rather than a non-specific verb. To study, this is rather very broad. And it should be ordered according to logical sequence and try to be specific and mutually exclusive rather than overlapping between objectives. And something need to be reminded, some students, they are overzealous, and sometimes supervisors are also very ambitious, having a whole range of objective that may not be feasible within the stipulated of time by the students. So this is the example of objective, and of course you have an hypothesis, so that if it can be tested whether your hypothesis can be proved true or not true. Okay, right? And literature review should be something that able to provide context to your research by looking at works. This is more focus of the down to what you want to do rather than the very broad overview. Okay, that is should be under introduction. This literature review focusing maybe the approach of certain issues that you want to highlight, the methodology that has been used in previous research. There's some what do you call weakness in your study that you want to overcome, so that your study will provide better result, better input. Okay. Sometimes students will say, there's no study done on this yet. But as experienced supervisor will say, it cannot be. There must be certain study done, but there's a little bit different from what you intended to do. So that should be included in your research, rather than say, no study done yet, so no literature review. Okay. So, all right. So that's why we always say, as a supervisor, if you say there's no literature review, means you do not look enough in your research. So this is something, another component we call conceptual research. Basically, based on what you have looked into your literature review, you want to zoom down to your research. This will be reflected in your conceptual framework. Many students confuse conceptual framework with the study flowchart. Study flowchart is how do you run your study, the diagrammatic representative of how do you run your study. Start from the screening, for example, the population interest, and then you look at the criteria before you before the participant before you collect your data. This is an example of how do you look at different angle of component when you plan your research methodology. We talk about you have to be relevant to study design, study population, the kind of sample size required. How do you sampling out your participant if you have more than enough than a potential number that you need. Okay, what tool you use, what kind of study variable that you're interested with, depending on your study objective and respective analysis that you want to do. Okay, how do you collect the data? Okay, you have to set. You need. This is something that students always overlook when we talk about operational definition. There may be standard of definition of certain criteria, but if let's say if you have more than one data of that particular variables, how do you decide whether are you going to take the mean or take the latest one and so on? So that has to be reflected in the operational definition. And of course, ethical consideration should be counted as well when you describe your methodology, and of course your data management. Okay, so what will you do? Basically, the methodology. So it should be clearly written as the reader able to understand the way of your research, so that whoever read your publication, they will know how to if the same research need to be repeated again, maybe with different population or some modification, then they know how to go about this, because this is part of the scientific knowledge sharing. So get organized of the subheading, clear study design, or where you want to do, sample size, sampling method, and so on. Okay. So the same thing, some of the example, research data, whether qualitative or qualitative talk about maybe interview, focus group, maybe, and some other method. I think social behavior scientists may know better than me. And study objective, as I said earlier on, was the main outcome to be measured, whether it is independent variable or dependent variable. You need to consider exposure factors, what will be the possible confounders, okay? And the data you're going to collect, whether it's going to be numerical or categorical. Do you need to categorize a numerical? For example, you need to categorize the height, categorize the weight, or categorize the hemoglobin level, for example, whether it's anemic or not anemic. Okay, that's need to be well defined and have a reference accordingly. Data collection method, whether it's questionnaire based, do you measure, what measuring tool do you use, whether the measuring tool need to be validated, whether it's qualified according to certain standards, photocreative, then how do you do the in-depth interview? Who are those involved? Who will conduct the interview? Is it going to be guided with a script and so on? And it should be feasible enough according to the time, budget, and required human resource. Okay, if you need, if you think you need an assistant to data collection, then do it so in your proposal. Common mistake by students is that they use a wrong form in the version and poorly written convincing methodology, and did not address how to handle vulnerabilities and high vulnerable groups. Okay, and data security also need to be clearly summarized. You may not need to explain in great detail, but at least the necessary component of security of the data should be there. Okay, and conflict of interest. This is what I meant earlier on, same thing, vulnerability, whether it's categorical or contextual, then you need to be able to address depending on your study population that you are interested in. And a little bit on informed consent, what information to be given. Informed consent. It's not just merely a sign for the form, but how much of information that easily can be understood by the participant you want to offer. Don't confuse them with all the technical terms that they might not even understand. They might not even interested to know or detail technical terms and process. And then what do you want to do? The process of data collection. What is the aspect to what do you expect from the participant? Whether the participant need to come for blood taking, do some procedure, do the running, to the interview, how long they have to come for each procedure, how many time, and what will be the potential risk and benefit. You cannot say that this study will have no benefit at all. Then what's the point of it? And the potential benefit should be, you should try to look for that. So that it is clearly what they call mentioned in the informed consent. And this informed consent is a legal document. It should be signed by the participant itself, right? Unless they are blind, they are mentally capable, mentally incapable, then you have another component, what we call legally accepted representative. They will be their spouse, their son, and so on. More important is the process of getting informed consent. It should be described in the protocol, right? So that, and it is followed during the process of getting informed consent and signed. All right. So important point is that do not copy paste everything in the protocol into the informed consent, because informed consent is supposed to be read by subject, and the subject may be ranged from highly intelligent to the common community at large. So what we normally say as a reference, if the informed consent is easily understood by anyone that is able to read, has some form of adequate education background, then it's a good informed consent. Okay, whereas the proposal is read by scientific person who know well about your research area. Okay, so a little bit on the research budget. I think time is already out. You have to consider scope of research, the tool that you use, questionnaire and everything, measurement tool, or whether it's involved test or lab fee or shipment fee, token reimbursement to the subject, how do you plan your data collection? Do you need to add additional member to do data collection? Whether they require assistance, they require training, and of course in publication, proofreading, and so on, to be encountered in your proposal research budget, and compare and match to the relevant grant that you want to do, whether USM grant or ministry, other ministry grant, and so on. So basically, ladies and gentlemen, I hope I won't take longer time. Supervisory role is actually enjoyable component of the research, because you will never know, you may come up with more magnificent 9 in the future, maybe come from any one of you out there. So I think I will have to acknowledge Prof. Zainovia, Prof. Aida Hanum, Prof. Azwani, as well as Prof. Azida, Cik Salwan, and Nohazonit, and all staff CDA for helping me out doing this presentation. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. We are now open for Q&A session. Anyone who wish to ask Dr. Azlan a question, please
Banyak soalan.
unmute your speaker.
Hi,
Banyak.
hello.
Okay.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
Go on.
I'm Dr. Rosa from School Pharmacy. I don't know whether because I missed some of the some of the presentation is actually regarding the human ethics.
Okay.
Because my research is not involving a patient or questionnaire or something like that, but usually like actually at the end is in vitro study, but we need the LDL from the human blood, so we need a volunteer to give us the blood so we can collect the LDL. So the LDL will be used for the in vitro study. I mean, like the LDL will be the like the cell, right? So the LDL will be
What is LDL?
the LDL is like a low density lipid
Okay.
lipoprotein. Yes.
Right.
So we collect that particular LDL from the human blood. So I just want to know, like, because we will not involving any questionnaire or maybe getting any patient
But
history or
involve
something.
blood.
Yeah,
Involve
but
blood
human
sampling.
blood, yes.
That
So
is human research.
but human research. So
Yes.
so me, like, because sometimes like I have a difficulties the items or the how to say the because in the JPM, because I once I fill up the form, so I don't know which, something like I don't know which because you in your online form, because we don't have any like questionnaire or maybe like sample size, or I don't know what to fill up. Just so it a bit confusing because it's not fit into the how to say
Okay. I think
uh-uh.
probably it is going to take a few minutes to guide you. Why not you
Right.
call our secretariat,
All right.
either Cik Bazlan or
Hmm.
Puan Abda, to guide you on which area, which part that you need to fill what. Okay.
All
So
right.
basically, it is a human research because you require blood sampling from volunteer. So
Yes.
basically, all these participants in research are volunteer.
Oh, because actually I just want to test, like, for example, like activity of this compound to the
Yes.
LDL, is something like that. Yeah. So
Correct.
okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Can we allow a few more question and answer? I think, or we should look at the chat. The timeline I already mentioned. I need to get back to Prof. Aida, the chairperson for animal ethics. Do we need to get approval from IACUC if we buy animal increment from outside supplier? From the information that provided by Prof. Aida and also in the website, if you are staff USM, you have to. If you're staff USM, you do research animal in USM. And even if you are staff USM staff, but you do animal research outside USM, you still have to submit. Next question, but from Nurul, if the PI exceed the deadline for correction due to sickness. Okay, so due to sickness ni case to case basis lah. Okay, we also human. We cannot what we call. I think communication is important. Right, communication is important. If you think if you cannot communicate, you cannot inform us for whatever reason because you are very sick, and ask somebody else, and that maybe the co-investigator should have make the effort lah to help you out. Okay, so that is why a good co-investigator is important. That's from Nurul. I'm sorry, I do not recognize. I do not know whether you are Prof, you are Datuk ke Datin ke, so I just call by name. My conform, adakah terdapat bayar dari kenakan perhimpunan etika? Okay, it is not part of the content, but I can answer yes. For bayaran hanya dikenakan for the fee, processing fee is dikenakan during submission. For research, that two category. Number one, it is company sponsored research. That's number one. Whether USM staff ke, tak kira. Okay, that's company sponsored research. This is well known by various schools, school of pharmacy, school of medical science, school of health science. They know this. Number two, if the researcher, the PI, is outside USM, then they have to pay. They have, but the fee is much less, 750. Kalau company sponsored, 3,000. One-off payment. Okay, walaupun dah kena banyak kali present, ada post approval, banyak follow up pun masih lagi sekali saja. Right. Kalau study is initiated by USM staff, student free, tak payah bayar. But if it's NGO sponsored, then now we have many NGO kan. For example, WHO, Research Institute. So into 750 juga, because they are considered as non-profitable entities. Two questions from Dr. Sabaria. I would like to study invocation patient. Okay. Sabaria, this is going to take another lecture, another discussion. Okay, I think perhaps that's why researcher has his own responsibility to read about the research, the kind of participant that you're going to do the research, right? The JAPAM role is to review, I think to review and then to recommend for certain aspect of research. Sometimes can be overlooked. As I said. Are there any criteria to be implemented? Okay, you can volunteer yourself to Encik Azlan, okay, and inform your boss. Then we can proceed from there. Welcome. Please, okay. CDAE, Lim Chia Yen, student application. How early? This have to what do you call? If you have only one semester, and then we can sit down together how to help your student if it's involved student. We can emulate what we have done with the mixed mode Master of Science in Public Health, in which we have a special arrangement so that it can, but it had to be planned very much earlier so that dia tak ganggu lah dia punya perjalanan semester. Can Dr. Lim Chia Yen or Lim Chia Yen contact Azlan later on, our secretariat? Okay, welcome Marahaini. Okay, welcome Dr. Mesiam. Anything else? I think I have to go. I have a few patients waiting for me already. Okay.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Yeah.
Okay, with that we conclude our session for today. I hope it is a fruitful session where you can grab some good input for a better understanding on research ethics. On behalf of CDAE, I would like to say thank you so much, Dr. Azlan Husin, for your time. Before we dismiss, please scan or click on the link given in the chat box to record your attendance. Here's brief information on where to submit the task to those who just joined our PSS session. You can log in with USM identity at eportfolio.usm.my. Click on the line icon you see on the right screen, which is the dashboard. From there, you will see an Engage tab. Then click on the groups. Please ensure your search is under all groups. So from there, you will see PSS at USM. Click on that button and join. So once it's done, you can go to the forums button to find the task you need to submit, and finally, you can click on the new topics button to post your answer. So you're all set. So today's task will be given in a QR code mode, which will be directed to the question as shown on your screen now. Please complete the task by 22nd of February. So if anyone has further inquiries, you can reach out to us and email to our main secretariat, Puan Hazwani at hazwanicmn@usm.ny. In the meantime, we will be here for any inquiries. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.